What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, and joining me is Jordan Ellis. Jordan, we had a pay-per-view this past weekend, UFC 255. Both flyweight champions in the UFC, women's and men's, fought. What did you think overall of the whole pay-per-view?
Well, the fact that it's a pay-per-view kind of takes away from what a decent card it was. It was a good card. It's just at the top, as we said last time, it was a bit shallow in terms of them two title fights. Divisions that people aren't traditionally hyped about. Champions who aren't, for me, at home in the UK, getting a monster night of fights like this. I was made up. I thought it was a great card, but I understand why some people might be frustrated paying 60 or whatever it is to get that main card.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, flyweights aren't traditionally the most exciting divisions in the sport. But I thought, to be honest, both these fights delivered on what I thought they would be. And they were both really entertaining. The card as a whole was pretty entertaining. But like you said, there wasn't enough name value in this to generate a pay-per-view cost, in my opinion. But yeah, it's still a great card. I'm still glad that it happened, because we have been a little skimmed out on cards recently. I mean, look at last weekend's card. It's all about name value. Last weekend's card was pretty abysmal for that. But alas, we had this one. Both flyweight champions fought. At the top of the bill was Deiveson Figueiredo defending his title for the first time against Perez. A fight that I thought would be very, very 50-50 going into this. And after seeing it, I think Perez looked pretty good coming out. They started to trade pretty evenly, but Figueiredo just goes for the kill. When he's locked in on the finish, he gets the finish, and it looked impressive doing it.
Yeah, he's a monster. And as I was saying last time, I did think it come a little bit too early for Perez. He looked good. He looked, game, and he was throwing stuff. But Figueiredo was just a monster, and I think he's going to go on and cement himself as a true flyweight champion. He's turning around really quickly. We'll talk about that later, but on the night he just looked sensational. And I think as decent as Perez looked opening up, it always seemed like Figueiredo was just almost not disrespectful, but almost just, I'm just gonna run through you right now. Like there's levels to this game, and I think Figueiredo showed it. He's fantastic. He looks brilliant. As long as he keeps making that weight, I think he can be a champion for as long as he wants at the minute, because he's a beast. And it's great to see a flyweight champion delivering finishes, delivering power, excitement. It's what it's missed for so long, and I bet Dana White and all the UFC are delighted someone like him's come along right now.
Yeah, his ability to scramble is next level. Like when he was in on that single leg, when Perez was in on the single leg, and he's looking for the trip, and all of a sudden Figueiredo spins around and locks up a leg lock, and then from that he manages to pull off the guillotine. It's just really impressive. I'm super excited to see him, like you're going to say, which we'll get into later. I'm super excited to see him next month and see him turn around quickly. And I'm pretty sure he'll do the same thing against Moreno. But we'll get into that in a little bit. And as far as Perez goes, he looked prepared mentally and physically. He started off good. I thought he was probably winning the exchanges on the feet. He looked like he was faster. He looked like he was landing more. His biggest error of judgment was that takedown. But from his perspective, no one could have thought that Figueiredo was going to scramble that well and pull a submission off. And it looked like he could have pulled his head out of that guillotine, but the squeeze must have just been unreal for him to get the tap there. So maybe Perez takes a step back and fights. Even Royval would be a good fight. We'll get into that as well in a little bit, but someone a little bit down the line of rankings.
Yeah, and I just think Figueiredo's one of them guys, he's kind of got that Conor Mcgregor at featherweight order, where he's just so big that I feel like he can afford to take some punches from these guys. I feel like no one at flyweight's going to be able to hurt him. So even when, I think Perez might have even snuck a little kick in there as well, he was just eating and it just didn't seem to bother him. And I think he's just going to be able to steamroll a lot of people in this division. And Perez, I think it was a little bit early. It proved on night it was a bit early. I want to see him go back, as you said, fighting someone like Royval. There's plenty of guys at flyweight now where just a few more wins and he's back into contention. We've seen it with Henry Cejudo. He lost, and he lost convincingly to DJ. He come back, and look what went on for him. So a loss against the champion doesn't define you. He'll be back. It's just Figueiredo's time, and he looks fantastic.
Yeah, okay. We'll jump on to the other flyweight fight of the night then, which was the obviously women's flyweight fight of the night, with the champion Valentina Shevchenko taking on the challenger Jennifer Maia. Biggest opening favorite in flyweight title history. Might have even been women's MMA history, but I don't believe that's true because Amanda Nunes exists. But she was a massive favorite in this fight, and Maya was meant to get just dominated. And to be honest, if I'm really looking at it without the commentary playing in my ears, she really did get dominated, let's be honest. She lost 4 of the 5 rounds. But in that second round, it looked like a glimpse where Shevchenko's armor was broken. Like, there was a way to beat her. What did you think of all that?
I think she might have been one of the biggest favourites in UFC history, full stop. It was crazy odds on it, and rightly so, because she's been such a dominant champion, and she was dominant again. She had a bad round too, but it's not like Maya had her locked up in submissions or was really threatening. She was just holding her down and just trying to stop Valentina doing what she's doing. So obviously she weren't able to do it for 5 rounds. She weren't able to do it for 2 rounds. So I don't really read too much into that. I don't want to be going at, giving bronze medals or last place medals for Jennifer Maia, because really she got nowhere near. And Shevchenko dominated her in wrestling. She's not traditionally a wrestler. And then in the 5th round, she put her on her and started throwing strikes and was looking for the finish. So just another, easy win for Shevchenko. And I just don't think it should be focused on that second round. She just dominated the fight, as you'd expected. I thought she might get a finish. Kind of disappointing that she didn't. But on to the next one now. I'd imagine she'd turn around quite quickly too.
You'd think so, and a lot of talk's been on Andrade getting the next title shot, and people are saying that might be competitive. I just don't see it. I think if Weili Zhang was able to run through Andrade in the way she did, someone like Shevchenko, who's bigger and as good a striker, in my opinion, should be able to get it done quite easily. I don't really like that matchup, especially seeing she's only had 1 fight at flyweight, and it was against Caitlin Chookagian, who did look good on this card, and we'll get to that. But as far as title shot goes, I really do want to say Weili Zhang go up. I know she's fighting Rose. Maybe Valentina waits until after Weili fights Rose. If she gets a win over Rose, it's like, where's she go from there? Go up to 125, have that super fight. If she gets through that super fight, you can go straight into the Nunes one at 35. So that's what I think. What do you think of those?
No, I like that Andrade fight. I think it's. I understand what you're saying about Zhang took it out, but it's it's different weights. I'd say Andrade is a bit she's draining herself to make that 115. So I do like it. I think she's got a threat. She's got a tactic. She's gonna come in and try and take Shevchenko's head off. She's also got the power wrestler and dumping people on the head. So it's. I like the fight. I think Andrade is the clear number 1 contender. I think Chookagian, besides Andrade, is the clear number 1 contender, and she wiped there out of the round. So there's nowhere really else for it to go. I don't know who she should fight. Lauren Murphy, but I don't see the point in Lauren Murphy right now in terms of fighting Andrade. Andrade's right there. She's got the name. It's a decent fight, and it can keep Shevchenko busy while she's waiting for Zhang Rose to play out.
I mean, Lauren Murphy's been calling for a title shot. I mean, she's on a 4-fight win streak. She's the only person in the division that's on 4 back-to-back wins in the top 5 from memory. And that's all well and good, and maybe she deserves it, but I think that Andrade, because she's a former champion, is much more marketable for the UFC to sell on a pay-per-view, No, if you sell Shevchenko versus Murphy, a lot of people aren't going to know who Lauren Murphy is for starters, and she's not a former champion like Andrade, so I think from the UFC's point of view, it's a clear choice, isn't it? So maybe that's what we see next. It'll be interesting to see, but we'll go before that one. We had a welterweight bout between the always entertaining Mike Perry and Tim Means. And I'll tell you what, I was really impressed with Mike Perry in the first round. I thought his grappling looked really impressive. I didn't expect that from him in the slightest. But as the fight went on, he just started to get outpointed and definitely lost this one. What did you think of the fight?
Yeah, he looked good at the start, and he was threatened with submissions. I don't think he's ever pulled off a submission, so that was a good first round. But just as the fight goes on, he just eating punches and eating punches. It's not really nice to see, because a guy who's missed weight bad, and then he's just not moving his head and not doing things you want to see from a striker like him. I think he's got pro boxing experience, and he weren't even moving his head. He was just eating jabs from Tim Means. So it was a very clear decision win for Tim Means, who looked brilliant. He was just picking him off as at will. He was dealing with Mike Perry rushing in and trying to take his head off. He had some good punches himself. That's a really good win for Tim Means. And Mike Perry, he needs to get everything in order, because he missed weight bad, and it was a bit of a shit show on Twitter the night before when he's cutting weight and talking about retirement. He just needs to get everything in order. No, he's got a baby on the way. He wants to stay in the UFC and keep paying his bills, keep picking up bonuses. He needs to be doing it properly, and I hope we do see him properly, because on his night, he's a really good fighter. He's had some really good wins. But this win his night, this is Tim Means' night, and hats off to him. It was a good win.
Yeah, the weight was a big thing, wasn't it? And I don't know. That's for 4.5 kilos. I think he missed by, which is you had a full camp to cut the weight. It just shows that you weren't paying attention to your weight and weren't eating correctly. He needs a nutritionist, and to be honest, he needs coaches because his corner, he had his girlfriend, and he had what looked to be. I know that they said it was a friend who doesn't have mixed martial arts experience, but the guy had some decent advice in the corner. He didn't seem like he had no idea what he was talking about. I don't understand why he wouldn't have a team of coaches that specifically know what their specific style is and how to help Mike in the fight. I know he doesn't want to listen to people, but when you're sitting on the stool between rounds and you're losing, like between the second and third round, he needed advice to make the changes. He went back out there and did the same thing he did in round 2. And maybe he would catch him during one of those slugfests they got involved in. But outside of that, he didn't make any changes to his strategy that were going to help him win this fight between rounds. So he definitely does need a coaching team, and part of that would be a nutritionist.
Yeah, he needs all the help that every other single fighter on the roster is getting. He's not special in that way. He's not that talented in that way where he can just go out and do what he wants. He needs the advice, and I think corner advice could have really helped him. That third round was up for grabs. I had it even going into the third round. He had to just go and take that round, and someone telling him maybe do this, maybe do that. It really could have been the difference between a win and a loss and an extra, double his paycheck. And as I said, with a baby in the way, he needs every penny he can get. So I want to see him doing these normal things. I don't want to hear it. Like, it's fun, as an MMA journalist to be writing about all this madness that he's getting up to. But really, for him as an athlete, he needs to be taking his career, very seriously now. He's getting towards his 30s. I think he's lost the majority of his last 10 fights or whatever he's done. So much way ahead for Mike Perry. I hope he makes a change. I hope he goes to a good camp. I hope he gets a coach behind him and, does it the right way, because he can be top 15 fighter, no doubt about it. He's just got to get his life and his training in order.
I'm pretty sure his last 10 fights is 4-6, but I could be wrong. If it's something like that, 4-6 or 3-6 in his last 9. But anyway, we'll move on from that fight. And before that, we had women's flyweights, who we just spoke about a second ago. Caitlin Chukagian against Cynthia Calvillo. I picked Calvillo going into this one. I thought the grappling would be the difference here. I thought she'd look better on the ground. She'd probably pull off a submission. Not the case. Couldn't get it to the ground, and Chukagian just picked her apart on the feet. And you know what? Chukagian looked fantastic doing it, so props to her.
Yeah, she's just a bit too big for Calvillo, I thought, she's looking at them standing opposite each other. I do feel like size has a lot to do with someone's ability to wrestle, and Chukagian was just too big and Calvillo couldn't get near her, and she was just getting picked apart all night. And it weren't the most exciting fight, but Chukagian, I think she's cemented herself as kind of that number 2 girl at flyweight now. There's Jessica Andrade, there's Caitlin Chukagian, and then I think there's everyone else. So good for her. She's still got a bit of work to do to get another title shot, though, because she was way off. So throw it in with another contender. I don't know who's there. Jennifer Maia. That could be a fight, but not too much to say. It was a good performance. She dominated Calvillo. I think could probably go back down, and on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean Jennifer Maia or JoJo even, because she's sitting around there. You'd think she'd probably be 4 at the moment. Not too sure. But there's plenty of fights for her. There's plenty of fights for Calvillo if she does want to stay at 35. But I think you're probably... Wait, 25, not 35. I think you're probably right, though. She should go back down to strawweight and have another crack at that one. But anyway, opening the main card, we had the rematch between Shogun and Paul Craig. And I just thought that Shogun Rua didn't really look like himself in this fight. He looked like he's a fighter on the last legs of their career. I know Dana White told him to retire. I'm not going that hard on him. I don't know if he needs to retire, but he just didn't. It wasn't very competitive, was it? What did you think of this fight?
No, not at all. I don't think Paul Craig had to do a lot, in terms of his takedowns. It's not like he was. I think DC was on the commentary surprised that he was able to execute these takedowns, which weren't, they weren't bagged full of technique. He just dominated the fight, start to finish, and made a legend in Rua, legendary toughness as well, tap to strike. So that is an indication that you're kind of on your way out and things like that. But I don't really like every time Dana White gets on the mic right now, he's calling for people to retire. I feel like that should be their decision. We already seen Anderson Silva come out to say they were trying to force his retirement. I think if Dana doesn't want Shogun in the UFC, fighting at the level he's fighting right now, just cut him and let him go and fight in ONE or Bellator or somewhere else. I don't think he should be calling for people to retire. And Shogun's form lately, he's not been that bad. It's just an off night maybe. So, give him a chance. If he wants to fight, he can fight. But Paul Craig, dominated start to finish. You can't take too much from it, but you don't want to take too much away from him. Shogun, let's see what he does from here.
Yeah, and let's be honest, you got to tell people to retire when you sign 30 people off the Contender Series or whatever they did in the last year. So they need to make space on that roster, get rid of the veterans and sign the new blood. But yeah, not much more to say on that fight. We'll jump on to probably my favourite fight of the evening. Before the fight even, I thought this would be my favourite fight of the evening. And the one round it lasted, it did deliver. That was the Brandon versus Brandon fight. Moreno versus Royval. For what this lasted, I thought it was fantastic. It was so fun to watch. I think Brandon Royval is the most exciting flyweight in the UFC. You might not agree, but that's my opinion. I think he's more entertaining than Figgy, even though he doesn't get as many submissions or finishes. I just think he's fantastic. But Moreno looked just as good and proved he was the better fighter. Yes, Royval's shoulder popped out and he couldn't actively defend himself. Regardless of him moving his head, he couldn't defend himself, so that's a shame. But I did think Moreno looked better. He managed to take his back. He couldn't get a submission, but he was hanging with a black belt on the ground and really being super competitive. So I was impressed with Moreno in this one. I'm really keen to see him fight for a title next.
Yeah, I think Moreno looked brilliant. I thought it was a really dominant, first round from him. In a fight that it was 50-50. I'm sure a lot of people had Royval going into it, but Moreno was dictating the pace on the ground, and in the end, it was his pressure that caused the shoulder to pop. He was all over him. He was making him squirm and duck and dive, and the shoulder comes out, and then he's got that killer instinct to go and finish. I know there's 1 second in the clock, but Mark Goddard, he had to step in and stop that fight because it's all about defending yourself. You haven't got one hand or one shoulder and you're just taking punches to the face. You've got to stop it. So really dominant display by Moreno. He should have the title shot anyway, but he's going to get it now. So, well done to him. And Royval, it's just a shame that it ended that way because he definitely had more fight left in him. Mm-hmm. And would they have let him pop the shoulder back in between rounds? I know that's what the commentary people were saying. I'm not too sure that the commission would be up for that. I think they say once your shoulders popped out, maybe just leave this fight and just count it as a loss. But bit anticlimactic because it's not what we thought it'd be. It weren't fighting tonight, unfortunately, but it was fun while it lasted, and hopefully we see them run it back down the line.
Yeah, it had all the makings to be fight of the night before the fight and in that first round up until the stoppage. So it is a shame we didn't get to see another 2 rounds of it, but you can't take anything away from Moreno here. He looked great, and we'll talk about it in a sec, I'm sure, when we jump to news. But yeah, keen to see him fight for a title. Before that, we had Joaquin Buckley back again, getting another highlight reel knockout over Jordan Wright, who I thought would be very competitive in this fight, and I thought he might have the edge in this one. But hey, counted out Buckley this time, probably won't do it again. So what did you think of that?
I was going Buckley for this one just because they keep talking about Jordan Wright being an undefeated fighter, but I know he's got a no contest on there, and what happened in that no contest, he got absolutely knocked out in 9 seconds, so I just don't think, like on the commentary, like, oh, this guy doesn't know how to lose, he's like not long ago just being sparked out, so I thought that Buckley might be able to get to him, and Jordan Wright looked good, but he also always looked vulnerable, like he always looked like he was going to eat a big shot at some point, and it was kind of just waiting for Buckley to land it. And that's back-to-back really impressive KOs now for Buckley. I think he's got that momentum to build on. He's got that rivalry with James Krause. He's a potential star at this moment. And it was brilliant to see. And Jordan Wright, finally got that, that one on his record that he already should have had. I think, I don't want to be speaking out of the line, but I think the guy who beat him tested positive for weed, and that's why he got overturned. So I don't think it was anything too sinister. But Buckley, brilliant. I don't know what you do with him because he comes in 182, something like that. Can he make welterweight? Does that take away from his explosiveness? He's in that no man's land right now. I'm really interested. There's so many options for Buckley, and interested to see where he goes with it.
This James Krause fight's fantastic, and I think it'll be very competitive for both guys, and I definitely want to see it. But one thing I saw on Twitter, which I don't agree with, people asking for him to fight a ranked guy next. I think they need a slow way up. He's fought Impa Kasanganai. He knocked out that super impressive spin back kick. He's fought Jordan Wright. He fought someone who should have been ranked in his first fight, Kevin Holland, and he got sparked. I think they should really slow build this guy, because if they throw him in there against someone like Marvin Vettori or one of these other top 15 guys, what's that dude who Chris Weidman just beat? Can't remember his name, but if you throw him against one of these guys and he gets finished or out-wrestled, or it's just going to ruin his hype. You want to slow build this guy, give him another unranked guy he can beat, and then after that, maybe you give him a 15. But I don't like the idea of rushing him into the ranked opponents.
No, I think the James Krause fight makes itself. I know there's a weight discrepancy there, but I don't think Krause is bothered. I think he'll happily step up to 185 and take that fight. He's not the biggest guy at 185, Buckley, as we just said earlier. It's a rivalry already. He's 3 fights in. He's already got a nice rivalry. I thought he cut a great promo. He's even given a bit of cheek to Joe Rogan. He's like, I'm not mentioning his name, shouting at Joe Rogan while everyone else is saying, can I come on your podcast? So I think he's got something about him, and I don't think there's a need to push him, because there's a really sellable, probably a more sellable fight. I'd ask 99 out of 100 MMA fans right now would rather see Buckley against Krause than Buckley against Akhmedov or, someone of that ilk. So, there's no need. Beat Krause and then maybe start talking about that stuff. But Krause is next. He's got to be.
Yeah, I agree. Is there any other prelims you want to touch on? We'll move on to the next event.
No, just a couple of shout outs. Obviously Shevchenko looked brilliant, and Dolby Rodriguez had a nice fight. Alan Jouban looked good after a while off, and just a really fun night of fight. I thought obviously there was an issue with it being on pay-per-view, but for me that weren't an issue, and it was brilliant to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a great card. We'll move on. We've got a fight night coming up this weekend, and there's, in all honesty, not a lot to talk about in this card, but we'll jump into the main event, which is a very important fight in the heavyweight division, because the winner of this fight is going to be pretty much first in line for a title shot after Ngannou and Stipe go at it again, bar Jones coming up and getting an immediate title shot, which I think they should. But regardless, we have Curtis Blaydes, number 2, taking on Derrick Lewis, number 4. This is definitely a wrestler versus striker matchup. There's no two ways about it. I think Curtis Blaydes, if he's smart, he's going to work to his strengths and take him to the ground immediately. Derrick Lewis is going to try and land something big before he goes down. Excited to see what happens. Taking Blaydes in this one. What are your thoughts?
I don't like this fight. I think when it first got brought up a while back, I was hoping Blaydes might go with Overeem, and I just do feel like it's going to be Blaydes dominating the wrestling, and Derrick Lewis is a tough guy. So he's going to hang in there for 4 to 5 rounds or whatever. So it's just, I think it's going to be really just Blaydes dominating on the floor, trying to maintain position and riding it out. I don't think he's going to get a title shot by beating Derrick Lewis. I think he's still got work to do, especially if Ngannou beats Miocic. He's already lost twice to him, so why do you want to see that trilogy? It really is an uninspiring card. Besides that main event, we've got Anthony Smith on there as well, but this main event, it's 2 big names. I'm sure some people are looking forward to it. I'm just not hyped by it. I just feel it's a very clear win for Blaydes, and maybe Derrick Lewis will pull off something and prove me wrong, but I think Blaydes has got it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Blaydes winning this, but if Derrick Lewis can pull it off, we get to see what everyone's been waiting for, and that's a rematch between Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou. Very likely we get that regardless of if Ngannou wins or loses for title shot. But yeah, I can't see it happening. That's a better rematch than the Blaydes one again, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, Derrick Lewis has so much power in his hands. There's no reason he can't finish Blaydes in this fight, and especially we've seen Francis Ngannou be able to do it twice now. But the difference, in my opinion, is Francis Ngannou is very, very, very technical and crisp with his striking. He's not the best striker. I'm not saying he's like an Adesanya level striker or even probably a Jones level striker in terms of technique. But I think he's a much more technical striker than Derrick Lewis, and I think that's why he was able to land these big shots and put away Curtis Blaydes. Whereas I think Derrick Lewis is going to swing for the fences, miss, get taken down. Hopefully it's more competitive. Hopefully this is a good fight. Regardless of who wins, hopefully it's a good fight, because the last thing I want to do is sit through 25 minutes of boring heavyweight wrestling. But yeah, not much more to say about that one. I do like this co-main event. I know he says not a lot on this card, and there isn't, but this co-main event is awesome. I don't know if my UFC thing is wrong, because it says Anthony Smith's opening the card, and I don't know if that's true. But it's Bernardo Muycano against Rafael Fizzyev. Muycano obviously coming up from 45 to 55, had some success, looked good doing it. He's got okay striking, he's got really impressive grappling. Fizzyev we've seen once or twice now, Can't remember. I think it's twice, but it might have just been once. But he's a super good kickboxer out of Tiger Muay Thai. So this is a striker versus grappler matchup again, but I think this is an awesome fight, and I'm excited to see how Fizzyev can deal with the wrestling pressure and how Muycano can deal with the technical striking of Fizzyev.
I don't even think that fight's on the card anymore. I think it's been pulled.
Oh, no way. What's the co-main event now then?
I think it's on. I think it's because of COVID. It's been pushed back to 256.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, so I'd imagine Anthony Smith. It says he's opening the card, but I imagine he'll be the co-main event slot, and it's a good fight. It's a step down for him, which I think he needs at the minute. He needs a win because he's been dominated his last two fights. They've been tough fights, and it's been making him question what's his future in terms of being a light heavyweight. Can he compete with these guys? And I think if he loses to Devin Clark, I think that's a very clear sign that he needs to change something up because I don't think Devin Clark is on that level yet. I think this is a really nice fight for Span. I think the UFC for Smith, sorry. I think the UFC have been quite kind giving him this one. And it's a really good chance for him to get back in the win column, get that confidence going again, and maybe make another run.
Yeah, and forget what I said about the co-main event then, because I imagine this probably is the co-main event. It must just be the UFC site being weird. But Anthony Smith, this is a must-win fight, like you said, and it's definitely a winnable fight for him. I mean, Devin Clark's been submitted recently. He wins most of his fights by decision, of recently anyway. So if Anthony Smith loses this one, it's pretty much moved down a weight class or to change something massive. But we saw him at middleweight. He didn't have a lot of success. So I'm not really interested in this fight, dare I say, but Anthony Smith really does need to win this one, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really does. It's make or break for him, especially at light heavyweight. I think Devin Clark, for him, this is a brilliant opportunity because Anthony Smith's one of the biggest names, in that light heavyweight division. So if you can take out him, even if he's on a 2-fight losing streak, that's a statement of intent, really, and huge stuff for him. But besides that fight, there's not a lot. Rachel Ostovich is on the card, and she always brings a lot of eyes and attention, and hopefully it can be for the fighting skills. And Gina Mazzani is, we spoke to her when this fight got announced. Mm-hmm. She's not at that level either. So it's two girls, who have got something to prove, and they need to come out and do it. And it looks like they're going to be on the main card. So let's see what happens there. Ashley Evans-Smith, she's looked good lately. Martin Day, he lost his last fight, but he looked decent as well. And Spike Carlisle had a really fun one last time out, but again, it's not the best card, and we're getting a lot of these lately. But I think they're just cramming it in before Christmas, and then we have a few weeks break and start fresh in anyone who can get back to at least some type of normality, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. There's not a lot on that card, but hey, we got 3 more weeks after that of fantastic cards from memory. So we'll jump onto one of them. We'll get into news. And the biggest news I have of the day is Petr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling has been postponed. It was meant to headline UFC 256. No longer going to be doing that. They haven't got a date for when it'll be rescheduled to, but as it stands, it's no longer on the card, which at first I thought was a massive hit to the card. I was like, how is this going to hold together? But I saw the full main card that is currently booked, and it is still stacked. I mean, you've got Figueiredo versus Moreno at the headliner now. Figueiredo turning down on just a month. Both guys turning around in just under a month, actually. It's pretty wild. And then the co-main, you have Ferguson versus Oliveira, which is one of my favorite fights. Then you have Vettori versus Jacare, Dos Santos versus Gain, Swanson versus Pineda. All fantastic fights. Do you think these fights are enough to replace the void missing from that Yan versus Sterling matchup, or do you think that was a big blow to the card?
I do think it's a big blow, and it's unfortunate, especially if you lost Nunes as well. But it's just, I think this is what we're going to have to make do with. And I think adding Tony Ferguson to that card is a huge win for the UFC because Tony Ferguson is pay-per-view. He's a pay-per-view, star at this point. I feel like even in a 3-round fight against Oliveira, he adds a lot of weight to that card. I'd say potentially more weight than that bantamweight title fight, which is, maybe seems a bit disrespectful, but that's what Tony Ferguson's earned by being, on a 12-fight win streak and being an interim champion. So UFC have, I'm sure once they've heard this news about Sterling or Yan falling out, they've had to just go and grab Ferguson, grab this flyweight title fight, and they've done well again to adapt and overcome and still put this on. It's a decent card, and I'm sure there'll be some people saying this is a better card than 255. So, yeah, UFC have done well.
I agree. And like you said, I think it is a better card than the one we had last weekend, and might just be because I'm a big Tony Ferguson fan. And that fight does really interest me, Ferguson versus Oliveira, because they're the same fighter. They have very similar styles. Neither guy's got that huge one-punch knockout power. Both guys are volume strikers. Both guys have fantastic jiu-jitsu. I think Ferguson's jiu-jitsu's his jiu-jitsu defense anyway is probably better. And I think that might be a big factor in this one, because if you look at it, Oliveira's been submitted by people before. Oliveira's been finished by people before. Tony Ferguson got finished in his last fight over 5 rounds, where he kind of had the doctor call it, or the ref call it. It wasn't really he got knocked out or submitted. So I think he's probably more durable. Can he win this fight over 3 rounds? That's more competitive. I do think it's a bit of a 50-50 matchup, especially given the similarities of both guys. But yeah, excited to see it.
Yeah, Tony against Charles it's a brilliant fight, and they're almost the same fighter. It's a coming out party for Charles Oliveira. Seven wins on the bounce, and he's been knocking at the door waiting for a big opportunity, and this is it. This is Tony Ferguson off the back of a really tough loss, and he needs a win, but is he even capable now? He's getting up there in age. He's a worn fighter in terms of he's been in a lot of wars, and it might just be Charles Oliveira's time, but it's a brilliant fight, a brilliant addition to the card, and it's definitely pay-per-view worthy. So it really gives that UFC 256 card something worth selling, even though they've lost Nunes, even though they've lost Peter Yan against Sterling. It's still a really fun card, and that's probably the best fight on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, like you said, Tony's getting a little bit older. And last time Charles Oliveira fought, I counted him out. I thought Kevin Lee looked fantastic against Gillespie. I thought Kevin Lee was reformed. I thought he was going to come in there and smash through Oliveira and get back to where he was before he had that loss to Tony for the interim title. But it wasn't the case. I mean, Oliveira, he might not have won a couple of the first rounds. I can't remember from memory. I haven't watched it in a long time. But I do remember it being quite competitive, if not Lee was winning the fight, up until he shot that takedown and got caught in a guillotine, a monstrous guillotine, And I from memory, I think it was Lee's fight to lose. I think he kind of was shot that takedown and ended up losing. But for Oliveira to pull that off, yeah, he could do that to anyone. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and in that fight, he actually looked really good on the feet. He was peppering Lee with strikes, and that's the thing with Lee. He does tend to start good, but he always seems to fade away, and someone's able to catch him and something. And he was even saying himself he's frustrated getting there. But I think Oliveira, that was the biggest win he's had in Jordan's streak. This will be an even bigger one. This is something that can propel him into title contention, and it's a huge fight and one he deserves. I think he's the most active winning fighter with that streak right now after Tony lost. So it's a worthwhile fight. I'm made up for Tony because I think style wise it's a better fight than Michael Chandler, which is being talked about. So yeah, great fight. Can't wait.
Absolutely. And I know you want to speak out the McGregor news, so I'll throw that to you.
Well, yeah, finally it's official. It's official. Dana White's confirmed it. Conor McGregor said he signed. It's it seems to have been a while in the making where we've been waiting for Conor to sign, and imagine there was just a few little money things holding it up, but now we're here, and it's great to see him back. He's still a big star in the sport, and it's just he's almost so big that he can't compete at it. He can't compete 3 or 4 times a year. It's just it's a spectacle every time he fights, and well done for everyone getting it done during lockdown, because I'm sure everyone's taking a pay cut for this one. Without the crowd, without a live gate, it's tough, and they've managed to pull it off, and I can't wait for UFC 257.
Well, I think you missed that one. There is going to be a crowd, and there likely will be a live gate. Dana White said there will be a crowd. It's going to be on Fight Island. He hasn't specified whether people will be able to buy tickets and go to it, or if it'll be like a crowd of special guests like the Khabib Gaethje card was. Yeah.
It's not going to be a card in the sense that they're not going to sell out the MGM Grand. They're not going to sell out the T-Mobile. They're going to be, losing the money. And how many people are they going to get in this Etihad Arena? I don't think it's going to be the numbers they used to. So, in terms of Conor McGregor fight, they are losing a big portion. Hopefully they can gain some of that back. Vaccines getting talked about. Hopefully, it seems like Abu Dhabi have kind of already got a vaccine going. because I've seen they running events where as long as you got the vaccine, you can go in. So let's see what they do with it. As we said, you can't write off Dana White no matter what goes on. So I'm sure he'll manage to make it worthwhile for him in the UFC, and everyone will get paid well. But it's a shame that we're going to see Conor McGregor fight just no crowd, because he does seem to thrive off that type of stuff.
I don't think it will affect him too much, to be honest. I think he's his own biggest fan, right? He doesn't need a big crowd of 60,000 people cheering him on. I think he's confident in his own abilities himself, and I think he definitely goes out there and get this done. It's a good fight. Poirier's improved leaps and bounds since they first fought, and McGregor has as well, but I'd say Poirier more than McGregor. When they first fought, I thought McGregor seemed to be more of a finished product, if you know what I mean. He looked like a more of a finished product than Poirier to where he is now. But I still think McGregor wins this one. I think he's just too fast on the feet. I think he has a bit too much power. Poirier showed a good chin, though. So we saw him fight Gaethje and he couldn't get put away. It will be interesting. I do early take McGregor in this, though.
Yeah, I take McGregor too. And I think by the time it rolls around, we might actually have the title on the line. I know Dana's no in it right now, but Khabib said on several occasions, I'm retired, I'm done. At some point you've got to just respect what he's saying and let him go. But Dana White's not feeling like he wants to do that, and he's going to keep pushing. But I'd say as we creep into January, if Khabib's still saying he's done, I know Dana said he's got meetings set up with him before the holidays, so we could see an announcement about that being a title fight, and it's huge. It's a huge fight, and I expect Conor McGregor to win. It might take him a round or two or three, but I expect him to get the finish too.
I think, and you could call me crazy, but I think maybe that if Tony Ferguson's able to get a win over Charles Oliveira here, they could bait Khabib back into taking that Ferguson fight, because it's been booked so many times and everyone wants to see it. There's no denying that. If Ferguson's able to get a convincing win, a stoppage in 1 or 2 rounds, I honestly do think there's a chance that we see Khabib come back and defend his title one last time against Ferguson. Do you think that's realistic, or do you think Khabib's more likely done?
I think he is, but I think it's more the options on the table. I think right now the options are Conor and Dustin, really, and Tony's not an option. Once he becomes an option, I think that does change things, and I think he would be more willing. As you said, 30 is a nice number to end on. Tony Ferguson's the fight everyone's always wanted. A lot of people think Tony Ferguson still stands a chance against him and is probably the best threat, me included. So I think that is another. That's an element that could drag him back, but it's going to have to be Tony Ferguson. I don't see anyone else who is going to be able to persuade Khabib to come back.
Yeah, and hopefully we do see it, because I've been waiting for that one, and it would be a shame to not see it. But last thing I have before we wrap it up, not MMA related, boxing related, we have match of 2 veterans, a match of 2 all-time greats, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., and I've been a bit excited for this fight, just low-key, a bit excited. But then I found out at the post-fight press conference of the UFC, there's some ridiculous rule set in place for this fight, where because it's an exhibition, there will be no winner. There's not to be any knockouts. Like, they're apparently not allowed to knock each other out. There's a bunch of officials and stuff to stop them from doing that. Apparently, it is just hard sparring. Do you think that takes away from the spectacle that this could have been?
I don't know, because it's very mixed messages from both sides. By Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., they're very adamant that it's not hard sparring. It's not all these things people are saying. So I guess we'll find out on the night. And then also you've got, I think, Jake Paul's he's in a pro boxing fight on the undercard, isn't he? So that's not going to be hard sparring. It's just all a bit of a circus, and it's one I'll be tuning into. But don't get me wrong, but it does take away from it the fact that they're saying these things, and it's important people saying these things. I think it was Andy Foster saying, this is what it's going to be, and so what's going to happen if Tyson rocks Jones? Are they just going to step in and wave it off? It's and people are paying money for this. Even in the UK, I think it's £20. I imagine in America it's much more. So I hope it is a real fight, but it just doesn't seem like what we're gonna get. But intrigued at least to go to be watching it. But yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, hopefully it's a good one. I'll touch on that Jake Paul fight, even though obviously might not be a lot behind it. He's fighting Nate Robertson, who's a former NBA, some ridiculous amount of time, slam dunk champion. but not a boxer, had 0 pro fights. Jake Paul's had 1 pro fight previously against another YouTuber, which in all fairness, he looked fantastic and he starched the guy. But it's like, if you're beating up a YouTuber, it's completely different. I think he wins this fight, let's be honest. I watched the training room tape. I don't know if you saw that. Jake Paul put out some footage of him knocking out all his training partners, which really made me think, why would anyone want to spar with Jake Paul if he's just going to like go 100% and try and finish you in training, you know? But I think he wins this because of A, his size, B, his age, C, he's been training longer in boxing and he's had boxing experience. So yeah, I would say Jake Paul wins this quite easily, but I will hate for people to start saying that he should fight actual pro boxers because I think that'd be a mistake for his career.
I honestly haven't got a clue who's going to win that one. You know, he's beat a YouTuber, which is nothing really to brag about. At least now he's taking a step up and facing someone who's actually an athlete who's competed at the highest level. And you know that could tell on the night. I haven't seen anything of Nate Robinson, you know, sparring or doing anything like that. And then also Jake Paul, you can't really take too much notice of these videos. This is what he does for a living. He makes videos and puts them onto YouTube, and they make him look good. I'm not gonna accuse him of this, but I imagine them sparring partners getting, you know, paid a bit of money and are pretty happy to do whatever Jake Paul wants them to do. So it's interesting, and there's a sad note of Rashad Coulter. He's fighting. He's a former UFC fighter. He's in a tough fight. Badu Jack, I seen an interview with him. He almost seems embarrassed to be on the card. He almost seems embarrassed to be matching up against these people, and it's I remember he was saying he was meant to originally fight Tito Ortiz, and he's just like, I don't want to fight these. It can't be a real boxing fight because he's a, you know, multiple weight world champion, and to put him in on the stage is weird. So he kind of sums up my feeling where he's a bit uneasy about it, but he's also getting involved because why not? It's a nice spectacle, and I'll be watching no matter what I say. I'll be watching. So yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, I would definitely be tuning into that one too. Is there anything else you have? We're wrapping it up there.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Cool. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll speak to you next week to recap all the action from both the boxing and the UFC. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.